another Sunday Love Feast. So today we're going to be reading a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. But before we begin, we can start by reciting the invocation prayers, and this is something we can all recite together. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavalantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapayamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagadakam Sagadakam Tam Sajivam Sadvekam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Balaram Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tata Kanchana Oranti Radhe Kavaneshwari Vishamanusute Pranamani Hari Priye Panchakalpataruyascha Sindhu Varevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhattacharya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, we're going to be reading a verse from Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, which is titled Dhyana Yoga. Does anybody know the definition of Dhyana Yoga? Just like a general, it doesn't have to be exact definition. Any ideas? Yes?
Like meditation, where you're focusing on the tip of the nose and other such asanas.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear what she said, it's kind of just... Didn't hear? Do you want to repeat, I guess, again for the microphone?
It's more like the type of yoga that you see people do nowadays, where they're meditating on the tip of the nose and all these different breathing exercises.
Yeah. It's Srila Prabhupada, he described Dhyana Yoga as concentrating the mind and meditating on the Vishnumurti, the super soul within your heart. And this chapter here, chapter 6, it goes into detail on the importance of conquering the mind and how to perform this focused meditation. Like you said, focusing on just the tip of your nose. I mean, I think I go cross-eyed if I do that, so I'm not going to do it too long. But, some of the steps are kind of easy, Hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line. Just like, everybody can try that. Just try to hold your head, body, and neck in a straight line. That's pretty good. Some of you are doing pretty good. It's pretty easy. I don't know how long I can do that, but relatively easy. Others, they're kind of difficult to execute in the modern age, but they're not technically impossible. Like, you need to find kusha grass to sit on. No, I haven't seen any kusha grass, just a patch of grass in Florida. I mean, it's hard enough trying to find a nice patch of grass without any fire ants, just in general, let alone kusha grass. But I guess it's not impossible to find kusha grass, maybe grow it or something like that. And then some of the steps, they're almost impossible, like maintaining perfect samadhi. Samadhi is like trance. I mean, maybe you can do it for a millisecond, but for an extended period of time, almost impossible. Arjuna, he says in one verse in this chapter, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable for me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. I mean, How many of us have tried to just sit down and just meditate? Not even with japa, just you. Anybody? Anybody, you've tried that? How was that experience? Rough? Okay, at least you tried, right? You could say I tried it didn't work out so well. Especially in the modern era where, we're so focused on that instant gratification that, our attention spans are just so short these days. It's very difficult. So this dhyana yoga process, while it's bona fide, it's not quite easy. It's hard to execute. And Srila Prabhupada, when he described the different types of yoga systems, he used like a skyscraper analogy. He said, you can make progress to the first or second floor. Similarly, by jnana yoga, you can make progress up to the 50th floor. And similarly, by dhyana yoga, you can make progress up to the 80th floor. I don't know, maybe it's a 100-floor size skyscraper. But by bhakti yoga, you can go to the highest platform. So, if you're trying to drive somewhere and there's a route that's going to take you 8 hours to get there, and maybe there's a sinkhole, it might be blocking your path. Or there's a route that takes 4 hours and smooth ride, no issues, guaranteed to get there. You're going to want to take the quicker route, no matter how scenic it is or stuff like that. Similarly, we practice this bhakti yoga because it's quickest. It's the most direct way. But that's not to say that this whole chapter we can just write off. There's a lot of principles from dhyana yoga that we can take and we can apply it to bhakti yoga. Like sitting up straight, that's a good thing. You can apply it to your bhakti yoga. So hopefully today will be more of a practical class on how we can apply the principles of Bhagavad Gita in our daily lives. So we're going to read the verse. Yuktahara viharasya Yukta cetasya karmasu Yukta svapna vabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukkaha Yuktahara viharasya Yukta cetasya karmasu Yukta swapna vabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukkaha. Does anyone want to give it a try?
Yuktahara viharasya Yukta karmasu Yukta svapna vabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukkaha
Yuktahara viharasya
Yuktahara viharasya
Yukta karmasu
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta svapna vibodhasya
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yogo bhavati dukkaha
Yogo bhavati dukkaha.
Yuktahara viharasya
Yuktahara viharasya
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yogo bhavati dukkha
Yogo bhavati dukkaha. Maybe one Mataji's side. Yuktahara viharasya
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yogo bhavati dukkaha
Yogo bhavati dukkaha.
Yuktahara viharasya
Yuktahara viharasya
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta cetasya karmasu
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yukta swapna vabodhasya
Yogo bhavati dukkaha.
Yogo bhavati dukkaha. Okay, so Samani, do you want to read the translation?
Translation by Srila Prabhupada.
He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system.
So what did you get from that verse?
So if we practice the yoga system, we can, wait, what does mitigate mean?
Okay. Lesson is a, yeah, I guess, yeah. Lesson is kind of funny.
We can stop like our sense complications.
Yeah. Okay. So it's talking about like regulation, right? Because there's one word in this verse. It's mentioned 3 times, yukta. And you know, the word must be important if Krishna's saying it 3 times. But yukta, in this case, it means regulating. You know, he who is regulating, bringing under control. And the dictionary, it defines regulation as control by means of rules. So, you know, if you think about the world, there's a set of rules that govern the world that must be followed, you know. We all went to science class, and we learned about gravity. What goes up must come down. On the Earth, if we jump, there's a 100% chance we're gonna go back down. And, you know, there was rules you had to follow when you were growing up that our parents gave us, you know. No dessert until you finish dinner. Or, you know, you're only allowed to have half an hour of screen time. That was when I was a kid. You were only allowed half an hour a day. And, you know, all sorts of rules that our parents gave us. And there's even rules depending on where you live. For example, you know, in the state of Florida, it is illegal to own a kangaroo. But if you live in West Virginia, you can own a kangaroo with permitting, of course. It's a good thought to know. But we have entire branches of government dedicated to regulating the citizens, right? But if there were no rules, just imagine no rules at all that told us what to do, what not to do, what's going to happen?
Chaos.
Chaos. I like that word. That's the perfect word. What else?
There'll be no crime because there's no such thing as crime.
Yeah, I guess technically, yeah.
People would have a hard time regulating themselves.
Yeah, you'd have to regulate yourself, and that's just, yeah, that's hard. Like if you try to play a board game with someone, I don't know, Monopoly, any board game out there, but you didn't look at a rule book, you didn't even discuss any rules beforehand, you're just, let's go. Chances are you're going to end up arguing with your fellow players about something that happens. Oh, you rolled 2 dice, you're only supposed to roll 1 dice. Oh no, we never agreed on that, something like that. Or, you know, without regulation, people are going to take advantage of others. And society or a family, it's going to descend into chaos. Imagine if you jumped and only 50% of the time you went back down. The other 50% just kept going up. Or if you didn't have your screen time regulated as a kid, you know, we can see it with the kids these days, their attention span is just going down. Or if anyone could own a kangaroo, I don't want to think about that, but it's going to be chaos. So similarly, there's spiritual regulations that are outlined in the various scriptures that they're meant to be followed. You know, we've been reading verses as part of our 10-minute call, and it's kind of been talking about this same point. And starting with 3:31 in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he's saying that those who follow the injunctions given in the Vedas will be free from bondage of fruitive activities. Why is that? Because the injunctions, they come from Krishna, who is the absolute truth. That means if Krishna says something, it is true. And that is something we have to do to progress in bhakti. And because Srila Prabhupada, he's going from that absolute truth, the origin, the Krishna consciousness given us Prayam is true. It's like, you know, when you did geometry, if this, then this. It's kind of like you could think of it that way. These injunctions are true even when there's like an apparent contradiction. Because in reality, there's like contradictions because of our improper understanding. So, you know, if we don't understand, we should approach a teacher who knows about the injunctions and will help us understand. And then to contrast that, in the next verse that we were talking about, 3:32, he was saying that those who disregard the teachings will become ruined in their endeavors. it's going against these injunctions that the Supreme Lord gave us. There has to be some sort of consequences for that. If the government has a law against stealing, and you steal, you're going to get some consequences from the government. So without some sort of consequences, you're not going to learn anything. If a kid is misbehaving, just doing whatever, and the parents aren't doing anything about it, is the kid going to just stop on its own? No, they're going to keep, doing whatever behavior they're doing. Similarly, when you don't follow the injunctions of the Vedas, it's kind of going against quote unquote spiritual law. And you're going to get some negative result. And you got to think about it. We're fortunate to have this human form that has a capacity to understand whatever injunctions. An animal, it doesn't have the capacity. It can't think, oh yes, I'm supposed to chant 16 rounds a day, so that's what I'm going to do. No, it's governed by, the eating, sleeping, mating, defending natures. But if you just spend your entire human life in sense gratification, you're not going to get out of this cycle of birth and death. So if you have a savings account that gives you 5% interest per month, which is a lot, and you put $0 into that savings account, how much are you going to have after 12 months? Zero. How much are you going to have after 10 years? $0. Because it starts with nothing. There's nothing there. There's no money to accrue interest. So if you have a human form of life, but you don't use it in the service of Krishna, you're not going to receive any benefit. And why does Krishna give the regulations? And actually the verse we were reading this week, 334, so I can pull that one up. There we go. Can, Parvati, do you want to read the verse up here?
There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachments and aversion, because there is stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization.
What do you get from this part right here?
We shouldn't get too attached to the material aspect, because it would not be good for us, and be more mindful towards our spiritual advancement.
Yeah. So it's saying here that the purpose of these spiritual regulations is to help us control the senses, which are an obstacle on the path of Bhakti Yoga. So from what I've been reading, there seems to be generally 3 categories of spiritual regulations. There's what you're supposed to do. Then you have what you're not supposed to do. And then you kind of have the in-between. What you can do, but only in certain situations. And Srila Prabhupada said in the purport of this verse that even though there are those principles that allow us to satisfy the necessities of the body under controlled situations, we shouldn't rely on these regulations. Because practice of sense gratification is kind of a slippery slope. You can't guarantee that you won't fall down, no matter how elevated you are. You think about it. In Orlando, we have these toll roads, right? And these toll roads are very well maintained, and you have to pay to drive on these roads. So, they use that money to maintain the toll roads. It's very nice, very regulated. So because you drive in this controlled, regulated environment, there are no accidents, right? That's not true. I wish it was true, Every time I go on the toll roads, I can guarantee no accidents. I mean, in fact, I could probably look on Google Maps and can almost guarantee that there's an accident right now on some of the toll roads out there. Because there's some temporary enjoyment you get from fulfilling the senses, and you can become addicted to that enjoyment. We've been enjoying for so many years, so many lifetimes, so it's easy to fall back into old habits. Just like it's easy to get into a car accident here in Florida with the type of drivers we have. So instead of trying to enjoy the slippery slope, we have to replace our attachment to material things with attachment to Krishna consciousness. And there's also aversion. We can't avoid attachment altogether because aversion is a different kind of slippery slope. So really you kind of have to be in between. Detached from material, but attached to something. So if I go back to the verse, the other key word that I think I get from this verse, it's kind of like habit. We kind of define regulation. What's a habit? How are they different?
Habit is something that's automatic.
Automatic, it just comes automatically. Any other definitions out there?
you do every day.
Something you do every day, daily practice, yeah. So, according to the dictionary, a habit is a settled tendency or usual manner of behavior. So, it's kind of like a behavior, right? Good habits, things like healthy eating, regular exercise. And then you have bad habits, smoking, procrastination. It's very hard to form a good habit, and it's very hard to quit a bad habit. And because it becomes so ingrained in your daily life, in my preparation for this class, I always like to look and see, what does the Western world think about these concepts? And, I can kind of see the similarities and the differences. So there's this well-known book. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I have a bunch of my coworkers, they have this on their bookshelf. And, I was looking it up because, if multiple people have this book, it must be good, right? So they got principles, and they're very catchy. Think win-win. And that's kind of like, it's like seek mutually beneficial agreements in your relationships, or sharpen the saw. That one is, you're always trying to get growth, change, constant improvement. There's countless articles out there, almost daily, on how to develop good habits and get rid of bad habits. Titles like, The Key to Actually Quitting Bad Habits, and Should You Blame Yourself for Your Bad Habits? Kind of. You kind of should blame yourself, I think. But there are even therapy techniques, and the whole technique of this therapy, I think it's CBT or something like that, it's dedicated to help you kick your bad habits to the curb. You, slowly after time replace it or something for example, you go 5 minutes without smoking, then you go 10 minutes without smoking, something like that. Some techniques are out there. But what are all these material, quote-unquote, habit hacks missing? What's wrong with them? I mean, inherently you think, okay, yeah, sharpening the saw, I always want to improve. That sounds like a great thing. What's the missing link with those? A reason. That's right. The proper end goal is missing. Because with the material habits, you're always focused on how to make yourself better, so I can enjoy more, or, whatever you want to do. But we want to develop the proper spiritual habits, because we want to be able to serve the Supreme Lord better. That's the kind of difference, is the reason behind it. So, you can have regular exercise. There's nothing wrong with having that good habit, but the reason behind it should be correct. Srila Prabhupada, he said that one must be clean in heart and habit in order to understand spiritual truth. But there are habits that are part of us being conditioned souls that are hard to break. There's this story. So you have a dog, and this dog was made the king of whatever kingdom. And they got him a throne, a golden throne. They got him wearing expensive garments. And they actually, it was very nice. They were, oh, what do you need? Just taking care of the king. And then as the dog was sitting on the throne, he happened to see a dirty old shoe, just, in the corner over there. So what does the dog do? Yeah, he goes after the shoe, because, that's his nature, to just go after the shoe. And there's another one that I heard. If you have a pig, and you put 2 plates in front of the pig, one is nice halwa, and one is stew. What's the pig gonna go after? Both. Maybe eventually, but what is it gonna go after first? The stool. Because that's its nature. That's what it's used to eating. We can see even humans, they have these innate habits. They're not as dramatic. It's something like, when you're tickled, you're laughed. Some little thing like that. But with humans, it's more our free will that we use to condition our habits. And our habits, they're kind of dependent on our environment. A lot of bad habits like alcohol or gambling, they're socially accepted and even encouraged through advertisement. Like you're watching sports, right? You're watching a sports game. And every single commercial break, it's like Hard Rock betting or, I don't know, Budweiser beer. All these commercials are there, and it's like they're just, because that kind of mentality is around sports, right? It's sports betting and drinking while you're watching sports. It's kind of like that social thing. It's just something you do. So the only real way to give up bad habits is to replace them with good habits. And in order to have that determination and the strength to do that, it's necessary that we have the association that will enliven and protect us. Like if you put a sponge in a bowl of clean water, the sponge will be full of clean water. But if you put the sponge in dirty water, the sponge is going to be dirty. It's going to take up that dirty water. So we got to surround ourselves with some nice clean water. So in the purport, which we're going to read, Srila Prabhupada is going to talk about a few ways we can improve our habits. So we can read the first section. Ananda, would you like to read the first section? You are going to stop at the word goodness.
Extravagance in the matter of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, which are demands of the body, can block advancement in the practice of yoga. As far as eating is concerned, it can be regulated only when one is practiced to take and accept prasadam, sanctified food. Lord Krishna is offered, according to the Bhagavad Gita 9:26, vegetables, flowers, fruits, grains, milk, etc. In this way, a person in Krishna consciousness becomes automatically trained not to accept food not meant for human consumption, or is not in the category of goodness.
So what did you get from that section of the purport?
It's like what you have to train yourself to do according to the spiritual knowledge and for spiritual advancement. Like offering prasadam that Krishna would take and not something that isn't in the book of goodness.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that explanation, thank you. So this first part though, that was talking about extravagance. It's talking about getting too much to satisfy the bodily demands. And why does this block advancement in the practice of yoga? Why is, we want a lot of things, right? Why does it block our advancement in our yoga practice? Does anybody have any ideas?
Because to gain more, we need to work hard, and then we will not be able to focus more on our spiritual path. Rather, we will be trying to acquire more money or wealth to satisfy our material needs.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, in the verse before this one, 6:16, it states, "There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough." And Srila Prabhupada states in the purport, "One who eats more than required will dream very much while sleeping, and he must consequently sleep more than is required." And I was like, oh, so there's a practical reason why you don't eat too much. It's because you get some crazy dreams. And we think about extravagance. What's that first part of extravagance? Extra, right? Extra. When you're charging your phone and it reaches 100%, if you leave it plugged in, are you going to get any additional charge? Are you going to get 110% charge, 150%? If you just leave it in forever, will it keep going up and up? No, it's going to stay at that 100%. And some studies have even shown, if you leave it plugged in after it reaches full charge, you can actually damage the lifespan of your electronic device. Now, I don't do that. I put my phone to charge at night, and I just leave it to charge until I wake up in the morning. So, when you're over-endeavoring and taking more than necessary, over time it's going to damage your progress. Where you got enough, well, why take more? It's not going to help you benefit anymore. It's fully charged. But at the same time, we can't take too little. If your phone is always close to 0%, it's always at like 5% or something like that, you can't utilize it fully. You're just afraid your phone's going to die. It's going to reach 0%. So you're just scared to touch it. You're scared to use it. So everything has to be the right amount. Now, there's no universal right amount. I can't tell you, you have to eat exactly 50 grams of rice every day. That's not going to work for everyone, For someone like Sanaya, maybe a little bit of rice is enough. But someone, like Bhaja Govinda will need a little bit more rice, right? Rice may be a bad example. So 0 rice. Quinoa. Quinoa is a good one. So, the elephant does not eat the same as the sloth, right? But this is talking about food. eatables. It's described in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, food in the different modes. Srila Prabhupada says in 1710, the purport, the purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. So, foods in the mode of goodness, milk products, sugar, rice, wheat, fruits, vegetables, they're not just tasty, but they're healthy, easy to obtain. They increase the duration of the life. They have a purpose. Foods in the mode of passion, they're generally too much of something, too spicy, too bitter, too sour. And they're not as healthy, because Srila Prabhupada says they reduce the mucus in the stomach, and it makes you more susceptible to disease. And food in the mode of ignorance, completely unhealthy, old decomposing food. Food made from untouchable things. We say meat, fish, and eggs are generally untouchable things. Like if you think back, thousands, even hundreds years ago, was there refrigeration? No. So it was kind of like a practical thing. If something was more than a few hours old, it was likely starting to rot in the heat. So that's why that, food no more than a few hours old was there. When we eat rotten food, we usually get some sort of sickness. So these types of foods that were considered good and considered bad, they're not selected arbitrarily just out of the blue, but they have a purpose. They have that purpose of increasing the duration of life. And like is mentioned, it's not just the type of food, but we have to make sure we're eating prasadam. Sanctified food has been offered to Krishna. In the prasadam prayers, it's stated, among the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. But with the help of prasadam, you can control that tongue. We should get into the habit, at least that's one habit we can get into, eating only prasadam. Because, you can either cook it yourself, get it from the devotees or the temple, because we don't know what the consciousness is of people outside who prepare it. And we can see consciousness does go into the food. The secret ingredient is love or whatever they say. But it really is, because when you're focused on like someone you love when you're preparing something like, oh, I'm gonna cook for my husband, I'm gonna cook for my wife, something so nice, so sweet, you're just taking great care to make sure they like it so much. You're not as likely to mess up, You're putting that attention into the food. So, one, it's offered to the Lord, but it's also, we have to think about the consciousness of the food that we're eating. And Srila Prabhupada, he always emphasized prasadam. When the children would go to get prasadam from Srila Prabhupada, he would give it, even if it was their second or third time coming up, he would still give them a cookie, right? He pointed out, even those who are well off, they had a lot of money, they were coming to the temple to get prasadam. Not because they were hungry or in need of it, they had the money to get food, but they valued it as something spiritual. We're all spiritually poor, right? We need that spiritual food. We need the mercy from Krishna. And he said in the purport to 313, Bhagavad Gita, when there's an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Krishna and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection, and one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. So there's this pastime of Srila Prabhupada, and it's told by Tranakarta Prabhu. So Srila Prabhupada, he was entertaining some guests, and he does this sometimes. They'd come to the temple, and they had just received prasadam. And Harishwari Prabhu, he was Srila Prabhupada's servant at the time, he told Tranakarta, I'm going to take care of something. I'm going to hang Srila Prabhupada's clothes up on the roof. If Srila Prabhupada, he rings the bell, you go and see what he needs. So as soon as Harishwari Prabhu left, ding, 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 ding. So Tranakarta Prabhu, he rushes up to Srila Prabhupada's room. And so Srila Prabhupada says, we need more puris for the guests. So Tranakarta, he went to the kitchen to go get more puris, but they had run out of flour. And they couldn't make more puris. And so Tranakarta, he says this while I'm describing the memory. I'm such a fool that instead of making them myself, I went back to the room. Up to this point, Prabhupada had never chastised me, but when I said, Srila Prabhupada, there's no more puris, he was furious. What do you mean there are no more puris? There must always be prasadam. So, there must always be prasadam. I like that.
Does that mean they're going to be Puris tonight?
I can't guarantee Puri specifically.
Prabhupada said that.
No, he said there must always be prashadam. He didn't say there must always be
In the
Puris.
context of Puris.
The context of it. Anyway, there will be delectable prashadam later. I can guarantee it. So, I think we can move on to the next part of the purport. Speaker Prabhu, could you read the next section? And you're going to stop at 300,000 names.
As far as sleeping is concerned, a Krishna conscious person is always alert in the discharge of his duties in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, an unnecessary time spent sleeping is considered a great loss. Avyartha kalatvam. A Krishna conscious person cannot bear to pass a minute of his life without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, his sleeping is kept to a minimum. His ideal in this respect is Srila Rupa Goswami, who was always engaged in the service of Krishna and who could not sleep more than 2 hours a day, and sometimes not even that. Thakura Haridas would not even accept prasadam nor even sleep for a moment without finishing his daily routine of chanting with his beads 300,000 names.
So what do you get from this section of the purport?
I mean, sleep enough, but don't oversleep that you will miss some of the services or Krishna conscious activities that you are supposed to follow.
Yeah.
Duties.
So sleep is very important, but oversleeping is the real danger. So in this section of the purport, Srila Prabhupada is referencing 2 great personalities who were very regulated with their habit, and they lived the principle that was, not wasting a moment of their life. First one was Rupa Goswami, and for 10 days, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he personally instructed Rupa Goswami on devotional service and the transcendental mellows of Radha and Krishna. And Rupa Goswami, he wrote many books, but one of them was called Upadeshamrita. What is the English for Upadeshamrita? Nectar of Instruction, yes. So hopefully everybody's trying to read that book, It's a very good book. It's only 10 verses. So, you can take 1 verse a day and you can finish it in 10 days, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami for 10 days, so 10 days you can read Nectar of Instruction. For example, we were talking earlier about how extravagance spoils your devotional life. And in this Nectar of Instruction, verse 2, it describes 6 things that are not good for your spiritual life. And the first one, eating more than necessary or collecting more than required. Essentially, over-endeavoring, getting more than necessary. And, sleeping only 2 hours a day, that's what Rupa Goswami was doing. I know I can't do that. If I only slept 2 hours a day, by the 3rd day I would be sleeping at work. So, kudos to Rupa Goswami. But the second personality, Haridas Thakur. And it was actually the disappearance day of Haridas Thakur yesterday. And it's mentioned here, he wouldn't take care of his bodily needs of eating and sleeping without chanting 300,000 names of Krishna. I don't know what that exactly means, but if it means like Hare is 1, it would be about 174 rounds every single day. And if you're fast enough, you can chant a round in about 5 minutes per round. So that's about 15 hours a day. Not a big deal, right? But he was so dedicated to chanting the holy names that he said once, "You may cut my body to pieces, and the life may leave it, but I will never abandon the holy name, which my tongue will ever continue to chant." And that's from the Chaitanya Bhagavat 1691. But what's another example of someone that was very regulated in their habits?
Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada, yeah, that's true. So yesterday was the disappearance day of Haridas Thakur, and today is the anniversary of Srila Prabhupada taking sannyas initiation. When you become a sannyasi, as Vaishnavas, we have the general rules and regulations we have to follow. But when you become a sannyasi, you have extra rules and regulations that you have to follow. Who can you associate with? What are you allowed to do? What kind of food are you allowed to take? But Srila Prabhupada, he didn't let that limit him. He went out on the order of his spiritual master, and he preached this Krishna consciousness to the Western world. while still maintaining that regulated lifestyle. Srila Prabhupada's servant, Harisori Prabhu, the one from the earlier story, he was sharing what Srila Prabhupada's daily schedule would look like, at least while he was in Vrindavan. Now it's hard to say where it would start and where it would end because Srila Prabhupada he didn't sleep so much. But he never concluded like we do. We wake up, we go to bed, that is our day. Srila Prabhupada wasn't like that. But it would go something like this. 6 a.m., wash, brush teeth, and take Ayurvedic medicine. 6:30, 7:30, morning walk. 7:30, 8:30, Greek deities, Guru Puja, Srimad Bhagavatam lecture, and they were reading from the 7th canto at the time. 9 to 9:30, breakfast of fruits and chia. I don't know what that is. Yogurt? Jira. Yeah.
It's like a puff rice.
Puff rice, okay. 9:45 to 11:15, rest on the roof for an hour and then meet people usually by appointment. 11:15 to 1:15, massage. 1:15 to 1:45, bathe. 1:45 to 2:30, lunch prasadam. 2:30 to 3, sit in room or chant japa. 3 to 4, rest. 4 to 5, meet with specific people or devotees or chant. 5 to 6:30, give public darshan. 6:30 to 9:30, meet public or senior devotees, GBC business, or just chat. 9:30, take hot milk, massage, rest. 12 a.m. to 1 a.m., rise and translate. 5 a.m., light rest or japa. And it would just kind of go like that every day. That was his daily schedule. And he taught all of his disciples, too, how to have a regulated lifestyle. He implemented the morning program. The morning program starts 4:30, it goes for half an hour, then you start Tulsi Puja, and so on and so forth. It was very regulated. It didn't start, 4:30, then 4:45 the next day, 4:15 the next day. It was 4:30. And so he taught his disciples that same regulated lifestyle. But I want to make an important note that these are extreme examples of pure devotees, and we shouldn't imitate their exact actions. We can take that general principle and we can try to apply it, but if we try to follow exactly, we'll fail. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33, 30-31, it says, one should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. There's that past time where they were churning the ocean of milk, and different things would come out. But the first thing that came out was poison. And in order to take that poison, Lord Shiva, he just went like that, and he got actually blue throat from drinking that poison. Now, what happens if, say, I go and try to drink the poison? I wouldn't be here the next day. That's what it would happen. If we try to drink even a fragment of that poison, we'll be killed. For example, Rupa Goswami, he was surviving on 2 hours of sleep. I don't know about you guys, but I can't survive on 2 hours of sleep. What we can do, though, find that amount that is enough to keep us alert in our service. That's that kind of, one could say, minimum amount. Whether that's 6 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. There's that amount. And anything else above that amount would be considered unnecessary. We want to reach that stage where we're spending every available minute in the service of the Lord. So we can also slowly try to trim down those unnecessary things, excessive sleeping, doom scrolling on social media. I know I do that when I get home, and then I realize it's 7 o'clock and I've been on the couch for an hour, and that's not good. So everybody has those little things that we can try to trim down just a little. So to contrast this, who's somebody that was regulated, and then they stopped being regulated and fell off the path and faced some consequences? That one might be a little bit harder to figure out an example. Yeah, actually, Bharat Maharaj. That's the example I was thinking of. I don't know if anybody else has any other examples.
Fish guy. What's his name?
Ajamil.
No,
Ajamil?
Ajamil as well, but.
Bilbo Mangala Thakur.
Biva Mangala Thakur, that's a good one. The ship.
The fish, he saw the fish, and he became so disturbed.
Shabri Mooney?
Shabri Mooney, yeah.
The fish guy. Oh man. I don't know if I want to be known as the fish guy. But there's examples out there. But the one that I thought of was Bharat Maharaj. after ruling the kingdom for so many years, he retired to the forest, and his whole point of retiring to the forest was just to focus on spending your remaining years of meditation. And one day, he was by the river doing his morning duties, and he saw a baby deer, and his mother's had just died because it was being chased by a lion, and it got so scared that it kind of died of that shock. And it left behind a baby deer. And feeling great compassion, he brought the deer back to his ashram. But after some time, he developed so much attachment to this deer that it was disrupting his regulated activities. And Maharaj Bharat, he wanted to enter the forest to collect kusha grass, flowers, whatever he would need for his daily practice. He would be thinking of the well-being of the deer. While making offerings to Lord Vishnu, he would be thinking of the deer instead of the Supreme Lord. And it's said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, Text 8, which is where this pastime is described. Being attached to raising the deer, Maharaj Bharat forgot the rules and regulations for the advancement of spiritual life, and he gradually forgot to worship the Supreme Personality Godhead. After a few days, he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. And, at the end of his life, which he had spent 99% of the time following the rules and regulations and engaging in the correct principles, what did he do? What happened? Does anybody know this story?
Wait, could you repeat?
What happened after when he was dying? Sanaya, do you know? He became a deer. Yeah, but why did he become a deer?
Because he was very attached to the deer.
Didn't- Yeah.
So his last thoughts were about the deer.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear what she was saying, it was the Bharat Maharaj was thinking of the deer at the moment of his last life, and they say whatever you think of at the moment of death, that influences your next life. So instead, he obtained the body of the deer. Like we were discussing earlier from the 334 verse. The regulated principles, they're there to help us be free from attachment and aversion. But when we neglect these principles, then that attachment can kind of creep in. And Maharaj Bharat, he was lucky because he was able to remember his previous birth, and he learned from it. And then in his next birth, which he took a human form again, he was following so strictly that he wouldn't even step on the ants. He was carrying the palanquin of the king because they needed a guy. And Jayadabhar was on the side of the road. And you're like, yeah, you look like a strong guy. Yeah, I'll carry the palanquin. But he would just be going like this because he was trying to avoid the ants, and the king and the palanquin was just avoiding that. It's a very nice section of the Bhagavatam if you get a chance to read it. But I think we can go on to the last section of the verse. Krishna Prema, can you read the last? And it starts at as far as work, and you can go to the end.
As far as work is concerned, a Krishna-conscious person does not do anything which is not connected with Krishna's interest, and thus his work is always regulated and is untainted by sense gratification. Since there is no question of sense gratification, there is no material leisure for a person in Krishna consciousness. And because he is regulated in all his work, speech, sleep, wakefulness, and all other bodily activities, there is no material misery for him.
So, what did you get from that section?
So functionally, at the point when you are in full Krishna consciousness, you don't actually have to fully think about all the regulation, like, okay, I need to make sure my sleep. Jai Shri Nitai. When you're at this stage, when you're in pure Krishna consciousness, you don't no longer have to focus, okay, I need to make sure I get my few hours of sleep, and then you're so focused on just trying to regulate yourself and just trying to basically break bad habits, form good habits. Once you've gone through that hard work, at the point it's everything becomes subconscious, that you will do it naturally. So the point where you don't have to worry about your work, your speech, your sleep, your wakefulness. All of the bodily functions are trained in such a way that material miseries are out of the way, so you can just purely focus all of your energy on it, serving Krishna, on that pure aspect. So it's just a way. Regulation is meant to get you to a stage where you actually don't have to worry about it consciously, because Krishna will take care of all that for you.
I like that. That's a good summary. So we've been talking about importance of being regulated and developing good habits for eating, sleeping, and working. But you were discussing, right, that after a while your kind of habits become unconscious. You kind of just do them naturally. So from what I understand, you kind of have two types of habits: unconscious habits and conscious habits. What are some examples of unconscious habits? Does anybody have any ideas? Yes.
Like here I drive on the right, and India also when I go I drive on the right. It's a bad thing, but in India you're supposed to drive on the right.
You're just so used to driving on the right that even though you don't drive on the right in India, I see. That's an unconscious habit. Any other examples?
Checking the phone too much.
Checking the phone, yeah. I mean, just every minute, just like this, yeah. It's another one. One more.
It's like brushing your teeth and go to sleep.
Brushing your teeth, yeah. I mean, kind of similar to Kalash's example. One example that I think of is your drive to work. Once you've done it enough times, you don't need to think, where's my next turn again? Where do I go? You just kind of do it. You know already, I know exactly the path I'm going to take, and you don't have to think too deeply about where you're going. And when you regulate your body to get up at a certain time every day, it kind of just comes very naturally. And your body will wake up without even the need of an alarm, but you have to kind of be consistent with it. If one day you wake up at 6, the next day you wake up at 7, the next day you wake up at 5. It's not regulated, it kind of just goes all over the place. But what about conscious habits? What's a conscious habit? Does anybody have any examples of that? It was a little more.
Chant 16 rounds a day.
Chant 16 rounds a day? Okay. Think about it. Yeah. It's something you kind of have to think about, right? When you're first forming a habit, it has to be a conscious habit because it really hasn't become a habit yet, right? It's kind of...
It takes 60 days for something to become a habit.
60 days? Okay, 60 days. But a lot of the spiritual habits we want to develop should be conscious habits. If we're running on autopilot when we're doing our services, there's no devotion behind it. We're just performing the motions. It's like, unconscious. But we have to be conscious. There has to be some consciousness behind the habit. This is the Krishna consciousness movement, so there has to be the consciousness aspect. So, japa. Japa is one of those things that should be a conscious habit. Now, when you reach the stage that Krishna Prema was talking about, at the pure devotional service, your chanting becomes as natural as breathing. You don't think about breathing. You don't think, I have to breathe in, I have to breathe out now. It's just, japa just becomes so ingrained in who you are. You can't live without it. But we're not at that stage. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it doesn't have any specific rules and regulations attached to it. You've got something like the Gayatri Mantra. And the Gayatri Mantra, you're supposed to chant 3 times a day at specific times of the day. And that's the rules and regulations behind it. But you can chant the Hare Krishna Mantra anytime and any place. There's no, you have to chant it at this time. There's general guidelines, sure, but there's no rules and regulations. But we're not at the stage yet of, japa as natural as breathing. So we should develop the habit, a conscious habit of chanting our prescribed number of rounds a day, as well as develop good habits while we are chanting that help us have better quality japa. One good habit when chanting, sit properly. There's this recording of Srila Prabhupada, and my dad would listen to it while he was driving, and it's Prabhupada chanting with his disciples. There's 2 different tracks. One is a very Hare Krishna, very clear. The other one is kind of like more everybody's like chanting. It's more like a droning of the bees, because everybody's chanting at their own pace. And at 2 different points in this recording, Srila Prabhupada, he stops chanting and he just says, "Sit properly." And when me and my brother were in the car and we're just like, looking out the window, and you hear the "sit properly," just like that. Now, we did it more as a joke because we were kids, but why did Srila Prabhupada say that? Because it's important to sit properly. When you're in a conversation with someone, and all of a sudden they sit up straight, you're going to think, what's happening? What's going on? You think something's happened. So, when you're engaging the body, your mind is like, what's going on? What's happening? And it's focused. It's ready to chant the holy name. Now, there's a lot that can be said about the specific habits to have fun japa. There's multiple. Sitting properly is just one of the many. So, we don't have infinite amount of time, unfortunately. So, I'm just going to leave you with the one, and maybe if we have more time, we can discuss more. But one day, we should just have one day just focused on the proper habits of japa. That should just be one whole day. There's another very important conscious habit of our Bhakti Yoga practice, which is reading, right? Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized the daily reading. He said, "I am requesting all of my students to read my books very seriously every day without fail." What's the amount that's recommended? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. But how do we transform that reading habit from an unconscious habit to a conscious habit? Because I'll admit, sometimes when I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I notice I've zoned out, especially when they're talking about something like the creation of the universe, and this goes here, and then I'm like, what? I have no idea what I just read. It happens. I've not digested anything. So one way that might be helpful to help you be more conscious in your reading is to, after the end of each paragraph or each verse, give a summary of what you just read, either to yourself or the person you're reading with. And you can see that we were doing that during the class, for example. I'd have somebody read a passage, and then I would say, "Now what is your summary?" And it made them go back, read it again. What did I just read? What does that mean? Because even if you did zone out, that happens, it's okay. You can read it again and then try to explain it. They say, like certain concepts, if you want to know it really well, you try to explain it to someone, right? So another thing you can do is not read too much, right? Because after a while, your brain kind of becomes like jello after a while, especially if you're reading like the structure of the universe or something like that. So it's better to read less but be consistent than to read a lot at once and then none for like the next few days. Now, obviously, if you're really in the zone and you are really focused with your reading, don't artificially try to stop yourself, but make sure you are understanding everything you're reading and then knowing your limits. So hopefully that's something that will help with the conscious reading. And I was listening to a class by Sheshika Prabhu, and he was talking about 3 things that are crucial to spiritual advancement. One is japa, and one is reading. Now those 2 we've already covered. The 3rd one is sharing the Krishna consciousness with others. Those are the 3 things. And he said in that class that spiritual books are a container with a seed inside. And if the soul is ready and the ground is fertile, and then when they read that book, the creeper of devotional service will take root in their hearts. So that's why we go out and distribute books. It's crucial to our spiritual advancement as well as the spiritual advancement of others. So today is a lot of things, actually. It's the anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's sannyas initiation. It's Vishvarup Mahotsav, which is the sannyas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's older brother, Vishvarup. But it's also Bhadra Purnima. So does anybody know what is Bhadra Purnima? Any ideas?
Full moon day.
Purnima, yeah, it's a full moon day. That's a good one. What about Bhadra Purnima, though? The throne, right. So it's stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 12:13:13. If on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra, that's why I call it Bhadra Purnima, it's the month of Bhadra, one places Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne and gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme goal. So, this makes Bhadra Purnima one of the most sacred days for book distribution and sharing this transcendental knowledge. So, as a temple, we're trying to distribute 15 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's correct, right, Prabhu? 15? Okay. So, during this period, I think they're going at a discounted price of $251, which, that $251 is used to cover the cost of printing more Srimad Bhagavatam sets. So, if anyone feels inspired, today is a very good day to sponsor a set of Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it later. But that's something you can think about. That will help with one of those good habits of sharing Krishna consciousness with others. So, today we discussed quite a few things. We talked about regulation and why it's important, what are habits, prasadam, how the proper food impacts our life, examples of great personalities who are regulated and then maybe not so regulated, and then conscious habits that will help us transform our japa reading. And I know we discussed a lot today, and some of this stuff may be a bit heavy. But in conclusion, I want to make one very last important point. You're not alone in this process. Of course, all of us have super soul residing in the heart, so we're never alone. But you also have friends, right? You have people here that can help you, and they'll be happy to help you develop these good habits. If you need support, we have it. Association with devotees, that's a good habit. The only reason I'm chanting 16 rounds is because of the devotees here. Don't feel discouraged, because the analogy I heard, regulation is like a ladder, right? Somebody is there to hold the ladder and help you, make sure you don't fall. But you also have to go at your own steady pace until you reach the top. So I hope everybody, if they are needing some help, just try to find one of us who can help you as much as, I can help as much as I'm capable of. I'm sure many of us can say the same thing. But that's all I had in terms of what I was going to discuss. So we have about 15 minutes. So there's time for questions, but there's also time if you want to discuss maybe a good habit that you found that helps you, a bad habit that maybe you transformed into a good habit, something like that. You can also maybe practice some conscious listening. I don't know if anybody was actually listening, but maybe you all zoned out. But try to give a little summary of what you just read. Try to make the listening also conscious. So I'll open the floor up for that sort of thing. Yes, Gopi Bob. Can we get a mic?
So one of my really bad habits was, or still is kind of, it depends on the day, is when people are around and I have my hands in my bead bag, I don't know if I'm always chanting the Maha Mantra, but I've been consciously trying to make it so that if someone is around me and I'm chanting, and maybe they're also chanting, I want to use it as inspiration that they're so concentrated and they're chanting, so I should be. So every time I want to open my mouth, I just look at them and I'm like, okay, I need to get back to chanting. So yeah, that's my little...
That's good. Yeah. No, if I'm with somebody and I'm chanting, I'll be like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh, look, a squirrel. My coworker calls it the squirrel mentality. They're always like, just going after one thing and the next. So it's good to be focused, good to be regulated with that. I like that. Thank you. Any other things?
Also,
Yes. Microphone.
when I was getting a class while I was driving and coming, thank you so much. Very nice. For example, there are certain chores or work we do at home we don't feel like doing. So the best thing is to put on Prabhupada's lectures. And once the lecture is on, and it's not like the lecture is on in one room and you're in the other room grooming or cleaning or whatever, organizing. So then that way, you won't even know when that work is done. And you have multitask. And there's another thing, Like I personally am like deficient with vitamin D, so that's why I'm like, I have to be in the sun. So in the morning, after we finish our japa, it's good to go for a walk, do the japa also, and get sunlight. So it's like at one time we can multitask, especially for ladies it's easier. And then in that multitasking, we have to involve some bhakti process. So that's it.
You got to be careful though, and with the multitasking, because multitasking kind of means your energy is split a little bit. So you have to make sure you have enough energy for both of these things. You don't want to be so absorbed in the lecture that you are not cleaning properly, but you also don't want to be so absorbed in your cleaning that you don't know what the lecture was about. So
Yeah. And I think it's not good to mix up japa and lecture.
yes, that's correct.
That's so like when I'm walking, it's japa, walk in sunlight, and exercise. And when it's basically we're doing some task we're doing every day, then that Prabhupada lecture goes with that. Then you're not doing japa. So it's like one form of hearing only. That's what I meant.
Yeah, one form of hearing.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's. Do you do that? How do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, I get bored doing the regular chores and like that.
No. Do you listen to class and jump at the same time?
No, I don't do that.
Okay.
I used to, Prabhuji, I used to. Because
Great,
then what is
great,
happening,
great.
like, then these days recordings are there. And then, there's a very wonderful example. If we have a jar and we have like these big stones, I always remember this to give importance to japa, and there are small stones. So in the big jar, first put the big stone, which is like japa. And the small stones will go here and there. So other things will, happen along. And try to finish the rounds before 9 a.m., before we set into the mode of passion, So, yeah.
Yeah, but we cannot listen to anything else while doing japa.
Yeah.
There's no class, no kirtan. Japa means japa. Because japa means what? Chanting and
Absorption.
hearing.
Yeah.
Chanting and hearing cannot be happening if I'm Hare Krishna, you talking or something else, class is going on.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Like this one. Where is my consciousness? It's not basically doing an offense to the holy name. Where is my attention? My attention can be one place. So, class is going on live, for example, right now, 5 to 6:30, only one time we get in a week. Let's do the japa later on or before. So, but that's good. So, if everyone
But
should
walking
know.
and japa is okay.
No, that's fine. As
No,
long as you're
that's
not
okay.
listening to something else, you're listening to only japa.
Yeah.
You're only listening to japa or listening to the class.
Yeah. Thank you for clearing that. I mean, I
That's
made
very,
sure.
very important. No one does here, but I just want to make sure that we don't think of that. It's okay to do. Sometimes I see some other newcomers come and they will have 10 million class going on. It's not the way to. It's offensive to japa. Japa means I want to chant to hear the rounds or the Mahamantra back in the ears. So that's nice. And like Marisha was giving the class today about doing everything, which we all do, but adding a little bit of consciousness in there. Okay, I know I'm eating prasadam, a little bit conscious. That's the new thing I will take for myself. Thank you back from the class today. Okay, let me be a little bit conscious while I'm driving a Tesla, and now it can by itself, but we still have to be conscious. The car also says, be careful, pay attention, just make sure. So consciousness is something that we need to take care. Otherwise, all we want to do in this world, hurry, right? Keshav, he's not from Fiji, but he knows a little bit of Fiji. In people Fiji, they use the word jaldi karo. Everything jaldi. In Fiji, everything jaldi karo means hurry up. Where are you going to get to? Hurry up. Where are you going to get to, right? So being consciousness is what. So the other point is that all of us know everything else we do, we put 108% consciousness in those things which are very, very material. Oh, my boss is going to see me, let me do my work. My husband's coming, my daughter's coming. We have full consciousness. But when the Krishna consciousness comes, we have to tell everybody so nicely, Prabhu, can you please be consciousness? Can you be nicely doing this? Can you don't look at the phone, all this thing? All these things you have to teach. It's natural. Rupa Goswami is sleeping 2 hours. What do you think? He was a lazy guy, he didn't want to do work, he didn't have no job. Prabhupada slept only 2 hours, he didn't have any real life. This is our real life. We're only working to just get out quickly, out of this quickly, and then do Krishna consciousness full time. Our job, our life is not full time. Everything has changed so many times. This classes helps us. So 10 minutes reading and 10 minutes studying on that text review call. So that's how we do things.
Like one more thing I want to mention, like sometimes we hear devotees, they will chant like it's sounding like that. I don't know whether they're hearing very loudly inside, but to us, to me, my ears is coming like this. So is it offensive to the holy name?
No, when they chant, can you hear them?
No, I can't hear them.
So go and tell them,
Is
I can
that-
hear you chanting. Can you chant clearly?
Yeah,
I want to hear you. It's simple.
Okay.
Go to them, excuse me, I can hear you chanting. Can you chant clearly? I can hear you. Then I can hear you properly.
We can hear the names.
Yeah, of course.
That's like multitasking. And then, like, I don't know where their mind is because they're not even pronouncing.
Become practical. We have to become practical. We just cannot just think, hey, Krishna will come. Like, one example Marisha gave, a lot of examples she gave today. And, I always bring this up of the Western devotees. Devotees or people from the Western world, when they met Prabhupada and they get the Gita, what did they have in their hands? Drink, smoke, and meat eating, and flipping the page of Gita. Slowly, smoke went away. Slowly, drink went away. Slowly, meat went away, and they become gurus today. Even your guru, everyone's guru, they become like this. And people not from the non-Western side, all they come to the Lord and then go home right away. So the books are the only one will open our eyes. Prabhupada's books will open the eyes, nothing else will open the eyes. So that's the point here. The point is studying his books, not only to you, I'm telling everybody else. This is our real mandir. Mandir means what? Hospital for the mind. Mind has a problem right now, so that's why I come here to mandir. Anyway, anybody else?
Thank you for consciously listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the wonderful preparation you did. Anything you didn't like? Oh, yes.
First time I'm speaking here.
Very nice.
Very good.
Little bit nervous, but anyway. While doing japa, initial stages, your mind is going everywhere. You feel like that you have very important work to do. But my recommendation, just hang on, give it a couple of more beats, and see your mind will start coming back. And you will achieve a good focus. That's what I practice. But the first couple of beats or couple of minutes, the mind is wandering everywhere, and you think that I'm doing this time, I can do something better. But remind yourself, this is your time, and this is for yourself, and you got to practice that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
I want to mention one more thing. After you. Okay, the thing is japa, this is my realization, it could be like very mundane kind of a thing. So suppose there is a mountain, you go up a mountain and you come down a mountain. So when we start our rounds, it's the first 8 rounds, which is hard, because especially if you're not chanted in the morning, before 7 o'clock, then it becomes really hard from 7 to 9 or whatever later day. So the first 8 rounds, you have to think literally you're climbing a mountain. So, you're gonna go like that. Once you reach on top, you've done 8 rounds. Then, there's a saying in English, to reach home, whenever you go to a destination from A to B, from B to A, you always run home faster. It's like suppose I went from here to Gainesville, it'll take me a long time, but then I have to come back. It's very quick. I don't know, maybe it's like way back home is faster. So then once you've done your 8 rounds and then you're going down the hill, then quickly, it's like 8, 6, 4, quickly it goes down. And then because you're already in the mood and your mind is concentrated, like Prabhuji was saying.
So where's down the hill? Where's down the hill?
So down the hill is like no, it's 8 is up the hill.
No. 1 to 6 is up the hill.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is
Actually, I've hiked down the mountain. Yeah.
change the mentality just to say.
Okay, yeah,
That's the
Prabhuji.
thing.
Please change my mentality. Maybe my mind is can be an enemy,
No, at least you want to finish the journey. I don't want to do journey.
Okay.
So let's finish.
So 16 should be all the way up to the hill.
Or more. Minimum is the minimum.
Yeah. And then do extra little bit more hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I've hiked down a mountain because we thought, oh yeah, hiking up the mountain is easier. So we'll go first up the mountain, we'll take a train to get us up the mountain, and then we'll hike down. It's gonna be easy. It's actually not very easy.
Yeah.
It's maybe easier like exertion-wise, but it's so difficult on the body. So whether you're climbing up the mountain or you're going down the mountain, it's gonna be difficult, unfortunately. So
I mean, it's very mundane to compare, that, but
Yeah.
I like both the insight you gave, so I'll try to, think in different ways. I don't know why this came to me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Something that I've been stewing on more recently is that we have hard and fast rules in Christian consciousness. Say like, I guess the initiation rules, 4 regulative principles, and chanting 16 rounds. The way it seems to me is that these are the bare minimum in terms of leading quote unquote spiritual life. And we can survive and stay very stagnant just on these 4 principles and chanting 16 rounds. If we're not, I mean to say there's a lot of other bad habits we could have in our lives, but still technically be completely kosher with following the 4 regs and doing the bare minimum. And this is how we just kind of cruise along like this. Where's my taste? Where's my progress? Where's my advancement in spiritual life? It's not there. So then there's bonus points that we can have. To me, like bonus point is waking up at a certain time, nice and early, so you can chant your rounds properly and have time for other things during the day. Bonus point is reading Prabhupada's books more and more and more and more. Like watching Prabhupada's lectures or something. I don't know. There's like, it's easy to get complacent, it feels. Because these things can keep you busy during the day. But if you only do the bare minimum, then you stay at a certain level. Just progress.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of that example from that book that my coworkers had, Sharpening the Saw. You're always trying to grow and improve. Yes, we have the basis. You have to have a good foundation of the 4 regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds. But you can't have a house with just a foundation, right? You have to have those extra building blocks of these different rules and regulations. And actually, if you read a lot, you find that there's more rules and regulations. Like, we don't take a vow to only eat prasadam, but we can see from this verse, you should be only eating prasadam. Now, you could read too much, and you could say, oh my gosh, there's way too many rules and regulations out there. I'm just not going to follow any. And I was listening to a class once, I think it was Vedi Vyas Priya Maharaj, he was giving this class, and he was saying, there's so many rules and regulations out there. Especially a lot where it's like, on this specific day, you have to do this specific thing. If this specific thing happens, you got to do this specific thing. And he was saying, you have to analyze all these rules and regulations that are out there in all these books. Is this regulation going to help me advance in spiritual life? And you should prioritize those. Eating prasadam is going to prioritize and advance your spiritual life. Waking up early, that's going to prioritize and advance your spiritual life. So we should follow as much as possible, but we should make note of these are very, very important. And we should build our house with a nice little collection of good habits that we can have a nice little house of nice habits. I hope that makes sense. And now it's Gaurati. Thank you everyone for listening.